The year is 2023, a late summer afternoon. The air is thick with the smell of turned earth. Dr. Eris Thorne stands in a field of cover crops, clover and vetch and buckwheat, a green carpet under a pale blue sky. She watches the needle on her soil spectrometer. It hums a low, consistent tone. The digital readout scrolls with numbers. Carbon content, nitrogen levels, mycorrhizal density. She pulls the probe from the soil, wipes it clean with a cloth. She looks at the young man beside her. His name is Samuel. His last name is Hale. The farm has been in his family for 5 generations. Eris holds up the spectrometer. The screen glows. "I've taken samples from over 400 farms this year, Samuel. From the Central Valley to the Palouse. I have never seen numbers like this, not in active farmland." Samuel just nods. He doesn't seem surprised. Eris continues. "Your soil organic matter is at 9%. The county average is less than 2. Your water retention is triple what it should be. And this number, this one I don't understand." She points to the screen. A reading for fungal networks, the density of the living web beneath their feet. This is the kind of reading I'd expect from a 1,000-year-old forest, an untouched ecosystem, not a working farm that produces 200 bushels of corn per acre. It's not possible. She looks at him, waiting for an explanation. A secret fertilizer, a new technology, something. Samuel kicks at a clump of dirt with his boot. It crumbles into a dark, rich aggregate. "It's possible," he says. "It just takes a long time." Eris feels a professional frustration, a scientific curiosity that borders on disbelief. "We need to publish this, Samuel. This could change everything, the way we think about agriculture." He smiles a little, a sad smile. It already changed everything. Just not for everyone. He turns and walks toward the old barn, the one that leans a little to the east, its wood weathered to a silver gray. "Come on," he says. "I'll show you." But this story doesn't start in 2023 with impossible soil readings. It starts 70 years earlier, in a different world, with a different man named Hale. A man who was told it was all over. A man who was told the dirt was dead. The story of how he proved them wrong is more than just a family legend. It's a lesson in what happens when you are told you can't, especially when the person telling you thinks they are being kind. This channel is built on finding stories like that, the quiet histories that hold the biggest truths. If you believe these stories need to be told, take a moment. Subscribe to this channel. Join the community that honors the forgotten architects of our world. Because what happened in that barn changed more than just one farm. It planted a seed that is still growing today. The year is 1955. The dust had been blowing for 2 straight years. Not like the 30s, not yet. But the air was always hazy. The topsoil from Oklahoma settling on the windowsills in central Ohio. Leo Hale was 22 years old. His hands were already the hands of an old man, calloused and cracked. His father, Thomas, had died in the winter. A weak heart, the doctor said. Leo knew it was a broken one. He had watched his father watch the fields turn to brown powder. The banknotes had piled up on the kitchen table, each one a weight, each one a stone on his father's chest. Now the farm was Leo's. 160 acres of tired land, a farmhouse with peeling paint, a barn that creaked in the wind, and a debt that felt like a physical presence, a shadow that followed him from the house to the fields. He needed a loan, not a big one, just enough for the new hybrid seed corn, Pioneer 301. Everyone was talking about it. Drought-resistant, they said. The future of farming. He also needed nitrogen fertilizer, anhydrous ammonia. The salesman had promised it would turn his tired dirt into black gold. This was the new way, the modern way, the only way to survive. So Leo put on his father's Sunday suit. It was too big in the shoulders. He drove their dusty Ford pickup into town, to the Merchants' Trust and Savings Bank, a brick building with white pillars. It smelled of old paper and quiet money. Mr. Abernathy's office was at the back. Oak desk, leather chairs, a window that looked out onto the town square. Frank Abernathy was a pillar of the community, deacon at the church, president of the Rotary Club. He coached the Little League team every summer. He had known Leo his whole life. He had given him a silver dollar for his high school graduation. Frank smiled when Leo walked in, a warm, genuine smile. "Leo, come in, son, sit down. I was so sorry to hear about your father, a good man, one of the best." Leo sat. The leather chair sighed under his weight. He felt small in that big office. He explained his situation, the drought, the debt, the plan, the new seed, the fertilizer. He laid out the numbers with a farmer's precision. Expected yield, market price, loan repayment schedule. He had rehearsed it 100 times. Abernathy listened patiently. He steepled his fingers. He nodded in all the right places. When Leo was finished, the room was silent. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Frank Abernathy leaned forward. He looked Leo in the eye. His voice was soft, kind. "Leo, I've been a banker in this town for 30 years. I've seen good times, and I've seen bad times. I've seen families build fortunes from nothing, and I've seen fortunes turn to dust." He paused. "I knew your grandfather, Elias, a stubborn man, but a brilliant farmer in his day. And I knew your father. He worked harder than any 10 men. But this land, son, this land has given all it has to give." Leo felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. "What do you mean?" Frank sighed. "The model is changing, Leo. Farming is a business of scale now. It's about machinery and chemicals and capital. Your 160 acres, it's a garden plot in the new world. This new seed, this fertilizer, it's just a bandage. It won't save the farm. It will only deepen your debt." Leo stared at him. He didn't understand. This wasn't anger. This wasn't contempt. It was something softer, and in some ways worse. It was pity. Frank continued, "The kindest thing I can do for you right now is say no. I am not going to be the man who loans you the money to fail. I won't do that to your father's memory." The words hung in the air. The man who loans you the money to fail. Abernathy believed it. He genuinely believed he was protecting Leo. He was saving him from a future of struggle and heartbreak. He was offering him an honorable exit. "My advice," he said, his voice gentle. "Sell the farm. The development company from Columbus is buying up land all along the new highway. You'll get a fair price, enough to start over. Go to trade school. Learn to be a mechanic, an electrician. The world needs men who can fix things. This life is over." Leo stood up. His legs felt unsteady. He couldn't find his voice. He just nodded. Frank stood too. He put a hand on Leo's shoulder, a fatherly gesture. "You're a good boy, Leo. You'll make the right decision." Leo walked out of the bank. The sunlight on the street seemed too bright. The sounds of the town seemed too loud. He felt invisible. He had walked in a farmer. He walked out a ghost. The certainty in Frank Abernathy's eyes was the cruelest thing he had ever seen. Not because it was malicious, but because it was kind. It was the certainty of a good man who believes he is doing a good deed. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, but by a friend. By someone who claimed they had your best interests at heart. Someone who wanted to protect you from your own ambition. How do you fight that? Anger has no place to land. Argument is useless against the wall of their good intentions. It's a quiet, lonely kind of devastation. If you know that feeling, drop a comment below. Tell us about the kindest no you ever received. Because what Leo Hale did next was not born of anger. It was born of a silence so deep it became a kind of strength. He drove home. He didn't tell his mother what had happened, not in words. She saw it on his face. She watched him stand at the kitchen window, staring out at the brown fields. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The house was filled with the memory of his father, the weight of generations. Then his mother, a woman of few words and deep faith, did something strange. She went to the old roll-top desk in the parlor, the one that had belonged to his grandfather, Elias. From a small, locked drawer, she pulled out a yellowed envelope. Leo's name was written on it, in his grandfather's elegant, old-world script. She handed it to him. "Your grandfather gave this to your father. He said to only open it at the end of things. I think this is the end of things." Leo's hands trembled as he opened the letter. The paper was brittle. The ink had faded to a sepia brown. The letter was short. "My dearest Leo, if you are reading this, it means the world has tried to take from you what it took from me. It means the bankers and the salesmen have told you the land is finished. They will tell you to sell. They will tell you to run. They will offer you a new life in a factory or a city. Do not listen. They can take the crop. They can take the money. They can take your pride. But they cannot take the dirt. Everything you need is in the dirt. I have left you a map, not of a place, but of a way. Under the north post of the old barn, there is a box. It is not for saving the farm. It is for starting over. Remember this, my grandson. The dirt is enough. Elias Hale, 1934. Leo read the letter 3 times. The dirt is enough. The words felt like a lifeline, a forgotten truth. He walked out of the house. His mother watched from the window. He went to the barn. The air inside was cool and smelled of hay and thyme. He found the north post, a massive oak beam that held up the hayloft. The packed dirt floor around it was as hard as concrete. He got a shovel and a pickaxe from the tool shed. He started to dig. The work was hard. The ground fought him. For an hour he swung the pickaxe. His shoulders ached. His hands blistered. Then he heard it. A dull thud. The sound of steel on steel. He dropped to his knees. He dug with his bare hands. He pulled away the dirt and uncovered the top of a box. It was an old military ammunition can. Heavy gauge steel, painted olive drab. It was heavy. He dragged it out of the hole and into the light. The latches were rusted tight. He had to pry them open with the claw of a hammer. He lifted the lid. He expected to find money, old gold coins, something to pay the bank. But there was no money. Inside, nestled in dry, yellowed cotton batting, were rows of small glass jars, dozens of them. Each one was sealed with wax. Each one contained seeds, seeds of every shape and color, deep purple corn kernels, tiny speckled beans, red-streaked lima beans, amber waves of wheat seeds. On each jar was a small, handwritten label, Mandan Bride flint corn, Cherokee Trail of Tears bean, Sonoran white wheat, mortgage lifter tomato. These were not the seeds from the co-op. These were names he had never heard. They felt like names from another time. Beneath the jars was a book, a small leather-bound journal. The cover was worn smooth. The pages were filled with his grandfather's same elegant handwriting. It was not a diary. It was a record. Decades of observations, drawings of root systems, charts of rainfall, notes on which plants grew best next to each other. He wrote about the three sisters of the Mandan tribe, corn, beans, and squash planted together, the corn providing a stalk for the beans to climb, the beans fixing nitrogen in the soil for the corn, the broad squash leaves shading the ground, keeping it cool and moist, preventing weeds. A perfect, self-sustaining system. He wrote about cover crops, planting clover and vetch in the fall, not to harvest, but to be tilled back into the ground in the spring, to feed the soil. He called the soil a living thing, a community of millions of invisible helpers, fungi and bacteria and earthworms. He wrote that chemical fertilizers were a poison, a short-term fix that killed the life in the soil, leaving it dependent, addicted, like a drug. Leo sat on the floor of the barn for hours, reading the journal. The world outside faded away. The bank, the debt, the dust. He was listening to his grandfather speak across the decades. This was not farming as he knew it. This was something else. Slower, quieter, wiser. Frank Abernathy had told him the land was finished. His grandfather was telling him it had just been waiting. That night, Leo Hale made a decision. He would not sell the farm. He would not buy the new hybrid seed. He would not use the chemical fertilizer. He would not go back to the bank. He would trust his grandfather. He would trust the dirt. The next morning, he started over. He took out the old one-bottom plow, the one his grandfather had used, not the big diesel tractor. He hitched it to their old Farmhouse tractor. He didn't plow the whole field. He plowed in narrow strips, following the contours of the land to prevent erosion, just like the journal described. His neighbors watched him from their trucks on the road. They shook their heads. Old Man Hale's grandson has lost his mind. He's farming backwards. Leo ignored them. He opened the first jar of seeds, the Mandan bride corn. He planted it by hand, in mounds, not rows, 4 kernels to a mound, just as the journal instructed. Then he planted the Cherokee Trail of Tears beans in a circle around the corn. Then the squash seeds between the mounds. It looked strange, disorganized, primitive. The first year was hard. The yield was low, lower than his neighbors who had planted the new hybrid seeds. At the co-op, they laughed at him. Not cruelly, just with the easy confidence of men who knew they were right. That's what you get for listening to a ghost, Leo. But Leo noticed something. A small thing. His fields were greener. Even in the dry heat of August, the squash leaves shaded the ground. When he dug into the soil, it was cool and damp. His neighbors' fields were cracked and dry. They had to irrigate constantly, running up their fuel bills. Leo didn't have to. He made almost no money that year, but he spent almost no money either. No seed bill, no fertilizer bill, no pesticide bill. He had a small vegetable garden near the house. He and his mother ate from that. They sold the surplus at a small stand by the road. They had enough. The second year, he did the same thing. But he added a new element from the journal. Cover crops. In the fall, after his meager harvest, he planted hairy vetch and crimson clover. His neighbors thought he was insane. planting weeds on purpose. In the spring, he didn't plow it under right away. He let it grow tall. Then he used a roller to crimp it down, creating a thick mat of organic matter on the surface. He planted his corn and beans directly into that mat. The mat held the moisture. It suppressed the weeds. It slowly decomposed, feeding the soil. That year, the rains didn't come. A real drought set in. By July, his neighbor's hybrid corn was withering on the stalk. The expensive fertilizer had done nothing. Their fields were brown. Leo's fields were still green. The deep roots of the heirloom corn had found water deep in the subsoil. The mulch layer had protected it. His yield wasn't huge, but he had a yield. Most of his neighbors had nothing. They had to sell off their cattle to pay the bank. That winter, Leo was the only farmer in the county with corn in his silo. He didn't sell it right away. He waited. By February, the price of corn had tripled. He sold it all. He paid off the last of his father's debts, every penny. He walked into the merchant's trust and savings bank. He placed the cash on the counter. Frank Abernathy saw him from his office. He didn't come out. He just watched. A look of quiet confusion on his face. This is where the story starts to accelerate, because what Leo Hale did was not a one-year miracle. It was the beginning of a quiet revolution, a decades-long proof. He kept following the journal. He started rotating his fields, leaving some fallow for a year, planted only in cover crops, letting the land rest, recharge. His soil began to change. It grew darker, richer. It held more water. It was alive with earthworms. His yields grew, slowly, steadily, consistently. He never had a boom year, but he never had a bust year either. He was a rock in a sea of volatility. Let me tell you about the next 30 years. 1960. The farm next to his, 80 acres, went up for auction. The farmer had gone bankrupt chasing higher yields with more chemicals. Leo bought it. Cash. 1965. He bought his first new tractor, a John Deere 4020, green and beautiful. He paid for it in full, cash. He kept the old farmall in the barn, a reminder. 1972. A bad year for blight. The monoculture of hybrid corn was susceptible. Fields were wiped out overnight. Leo's fields, with their genetic diversity, were untouched. That fall, the farmer who had laughed at him the loudest sold his farm. 200 acres. Leo bought it. Cash. 1978. He bought another 100 acres. Cash. 1981. He built a new barn, 3 times the size of the old one. He paid the builders every Friday. Cash. Through all these years, Frank Abernathy watched, the witness. He would drive his Buick down the country roads on Sunday afternoons. He would slow down as he passed the Hale farm. He saw the new fences, the painted house, the fields that were always green when others were brown. He never stopped. He never said a word, but he watched. He saw a reality that his logic could not explain. He had been so sure, so certain. He had been so kind. Leo never confronted him. He never gloated. He just worked. He let the land do the talking, the quietest, most powerful argument in the world. His farm became an island, a strange, beautiful anomaly, while other farms became more and more like factories, dependent on chemicals, machinery, and debt. Leo's farm became more and more like a forest, a complex, self-regulating ecosystem. He was not just a farmer. He was a student of the dirt. He continued his grandfather's journal, adding his own observations, his own experiments. He found a variety of sunflower that repelled certain pests. He discovered that planting strips of wildflowers attracted beneficial insects. He was building a system that created its own fertility, its own resilience. He was free. Free from the bank, free from the chemical companies, free from the opinions of others. It was a freedom built on 70 years of patience. A freedom that started with a handful of forgotten seeds and a quiet belief. The dirt is enough, but that's not the end of the story, because a quiet revolution cannot stay quiet forever. A reckoning was coming, a moment when the two worlds would finally collide, the world of the bank and the world of the barn, the world of certainty and the world of dirt. The year is 1986, the American farm crisis. A perfect storm of high interest rates, low commodity prices, and a mountain of debt. The system that Frank Abernathy had believed in was collapsing. For sale signs sprouted in fields like weeds. Auctions were a weekly tragedy. Families who had farmed the same land for a century were being wiped out. Frank Abernathy was retired now, an old man with gray hair and sad eyes. His son David had taken over the bank. But David also owned a farm, a modern farm, 2,000 acres, massive machinery, and a debt that was a ticking bomb. One afternoon, a car pulled into Leo Hale's driveway, a new Cadillac. Frank Abernathy got out. He looked smaller than Leo remembered, thinner. He walked with a slight stoop. Leo was in the barn, mending a piece of harness. He watched the old man approach. He felt no anger, no triumph, just a quiet, deep sadness. Frank stopped at the barn door. He held his hat in his hands. He looked around at the clean, orderly space, the well-maintained tools, the smell of healthy livestock and sweet hay. "Hello, Leo." Leo nodded. "Frank." They stood in silence for a long moment, the weight of 30 years between them. Finally, Frank spoke. His voice was raspy. "I drive by here sometimes. I have for years. I see what you've done. I never understood it." Leo kept working on the harness, his hands steady. There wasn't much to understand. Frank shook his head. "No, I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. About the land, about you. I told you the farm was played out. I told you to sell. I thought I was helping you. I thought I was being kind." Leo stopped working. He looked at the old banker. "You were being kind, Frank. That's what made it so hard." Frank's eyes welled up. "My son David, the bank is going to foreclose on his farm, my own bank. He's a good farmer, Leo. He did everything they told him to do. He bought the best equipment. He used the best chemicals. He leveraged everything to get bigger, and now it's all gone." Leo felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't pity. It wasn't satisfaction. It was a profound sense of waste. All that work, all that struggle, for nothing. Proving someone wrong who thinks they're being kind is the loneliest fight there is. Leo said it quietly. It wasn't an accusation, it was a statement of fact. Frank flinched, as if struck. He finally understood. He understood the quiet devastation he had inflicted in that office 30 years ago. The casual certainty that had almost erased a man's future. He had offered Leo a prison and called it protection. Leo walked over to the wall of the barn, where a single heavy steel box was mounted. The olive drab paint was faded. A small brass plaque was underneath it. Elias Hale, 1934. He opened the box. It was empty now, except for the worn leather journal. He took out the journal. He handed it to Frank Abernathy. "This is how I did it," he said. "It's not a secret, it's just forgotten." Frank held the book as if it were a sacred text. He opened it. He saw the elegant script, the detailed drawings, the decades of wisdom. "What is this?" "It's a map," Leo said. "A map for a different way. You told me to learn a trade, to be a mechanic, to fix things. So I did. I learned how to fix the one thing everyone thought was broken: the soil." Leo didn't offer to pay David's debt. That would have been too easy. It would have been another kind of prison, a prison of gratitude. Instead, he offered him something more valuable: a way out. He went to his seed shed. He filled a small wooden crate with jars of seeds, the same heirloom varieties his grandfather had saved. He gave it to Frank. "Tell your son to read the book, then tell him to come see me. We'll start over." That was the reckoning. Not a shout of victory, but a quiet offering. The ultimate proof of success is not what you build for yourself. It's what you can afford to give away. And so, the legacy began. David Abernathy did not lose his farm. He lost his pride, which was a fair trade. He came to Leo Hale's farm. He learned. He worked alongside Leo for a full year. He learned to listen to the land. He learned the rhythm of a system that was alive. The next year, he planted 50 acres of his own land using his grandfather's methods. The old way, the slow way. It worked. Other farmers noticed. Farmers on the brink of foreclosure. They started coming to Leo. Not for money, but for knowledge, for seeds, for hope. In 1990, Leo established the Hale Seed Cooperative, a nonprofit dedicated to preserving and distributing heirloom seeds. He gave away the genetics his grandfather had saved, for free, to any farmer who promised to follow the principles in the journal. In 1995, he used the profits from his own farm to fund a scholarship, the Elias Hale Scholarship for Regenerative Agriculture at the State University. It supported students who wanted to study the science behind the old ways: soil science, mycology, entomology. The first recipient was a young woman named Maria Flores, the daughter of migrant farm workers. Today, she is one of the world's leading soil microbiologists. She has proven, with modern science, everything Elias Hale wrote in his journal by hand. Leo Hale passed away in 2018, a quiet, peaceful death. He was in his own bed, in the house he was born in, looking out the window at the green fields. He left the farm, now over 2,000 acres, to his grandson, Samuel. He left it with no debt, and with soil so rich it was a biological treasure. Which brings us back to 2023, back to Dr. Eris Thorne, the young soil scientist with the impossible readings. Samuel leads her into the old barn, the one his great-great-grandfather built. The air is cool. It smells of history. On the wall, she sees the steel ammunition box, mounted like a work of art. Its surface is worn smooth from 1,000 touches. Samuel walks over to it. He places his hand on the cold steel. "My great-grandfather told me a story. He said that in 1955, a banker told him this land was dead. He told him to sell. He told him he was protecting him. The banker was a good man. He was respected. He was certain. And his certainty was almost a death sentence." Eris looks from the box to Samuel's face. She is beginning to understand. The numbers on her screen are not about a new technology. They are about a very old one. Samuel continues, "That man's kindness almost cost us everything. Because you can't fight kindness with anger. You can only fight it with time. You have to be willing to work for decades, to be laughed at, to be misunderstood. You have to prove them wrong so slowly they don't even notice until it's over." He taps the steel box. This was his only weapon. Not money, not power, knowledge. The knowledge that the dirt is enough. Eris Thorne looks at the box. Then she looks out the barn door at the fields, at the impossible, miraculous soil. And she understands that she is not just standing on a farm. She is standing in the middle of a 70-year-long argument. An argument that has finally been won. Right now, somewhere in the world, someone is being told they can't. Someone is being limited by the good intentions of a person who is certain they know best. A teacher is telling a student to be realistic. A boss is telling an employee to stay in their lane. A parent is telling a child to abandon a dream to pursue something safe. They are not being cruel. They are being kind. And that is the most dangerous limitation of all. The story of Leo Hale is a reminder that the most profound revolutions are often the quietest. They are fought not with speeches and protests, but with steady work, with patient observation, with a deep, unshakable belief in a truth that others have forgotten. The story of Leo Hale is a testament to the fact that the most valuable inheritance is not land or money. It is a map for a better way. It is the courage to start over. If this story resonated with you, subscribe to this channel. We are dedicated to telling the stories of the quiet fighters, the patient builders, the ones who prove the world wrong, 1 acre at a time. And in the comments below, tell us about the grandfather's box in your own life. The piece of wisdom, the forgotten skill, the quiet truth that gave you a map when the world told you that you were lost. Finally, share this story. Share it with anyone who has ever been told no by someone who thought they were being kind. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that the most powerful answer to doubt is not an argument. It is a long and beautiful life, well lived. It is a harvest, grown in soil everyone else had given up on. It is the quiet proof. The dirt is enough.